welcome.
Welcome. Somber news to start with. Mike Leach, Mississippi State head coach, they just did a release 30 minutes ago that says Mississippi State University head football coach Mike Leach remains in critical condition at the University of Mississippi Medical Center in Jackson. Extent of information that MSU has available regarding Coach Leach's condition. No other comment at this time. Updates on social media when it becomes available. The family respects privacy. From what I understand, he had walking pneumonia for a very long time, and he was helicoptered from his home to Jackson yesterday. And a lot of the local reporters down there are saying it's a very dire situation. So hopefully they're wrong, and hopefully a miracle is going to happen, because we don't want to lose a great coach and one of the best personalities we've ever seen in college football.
There's no doubt about it. I mean, prayers for Mike Leach. It's that is a crazy situation, and we talked a little bit briefly before. I've watched so many of his interviews because I enjoy. Obviously, I think he's an innovator in the offensive game, no doubt. With his offense and the whole mesh concept and all that kind of stuff. So he's a brilliant mind. But I've seen at the podium, because I enjoy watching his personality, and the coughing and the clearing of throat, and but not like a few, like a lot, and it kept, as the season went on, it seemed to progress. And I have no idea if these things are related. You might know better than me, but like I did see it and think, like I know those guys, it was one of the downsides of, I would guess, of college football, right? Like if you or I were in that situation, like we have enough downtime that we might just say, hey, let me just go over to the doctor, and get this five. The way I am, I would go to three or four if I didn't get an answer that was made sense. But I can understand the rigors of college football. You go to a doctor, they say it's something, and you just, if they're wrong or they don't understand, don't get the magnitude, sometimes you just kind of move on and think, oh, maybe it's nothing, and it's just something that I have to deal with. And it's terrible news. I mean, just really,
Yeah, I don't have any information on it or inside information. Even if I did, I wouldn't say. But yeah, the busyness of college football and college football coaches, where it's 365 days a year, and you're always doing something, whether it's game planning or practice or watching film or recruiting. Now with NIL and the portal, I mean, it's just constant, constant. So even if a doctor did say, well, listen, you need to take some time and rest or get better, it's hard for coaches to do that. And I'm not sure what's happened here or why, this is all occurring. I don't have any inside information, but I do know, in my dumb world, when I've been told to rest for any medical reason, I just don't, because there is no rest. And so if that's, part of this for Mike Leach, it's sad, but it's part of the game. So we're going to see and find out what happens. They said they would alert us on social media. It sounds horrible. When I first heard that he was in the hospital, it wasn't sounding as bad as it has over the last few days, with the local people, saying that this is like a prayers miracle situation.
right.
So that's freaking horrible. So I don't mean to start on that, but obviously great respect for him as a coach, and as a unique personality, and he's a very entertaining individual. He's a very sharp football mind, and that's something that has to be addressed at the front. And it seems dumb to move into what we're going to talk about, which is locker room squabbles with NIL and transfer portal because of it, and our promotion. But that's what we have to do, is until we get further information, we can't really comment on it anymore. So I would say the promotion is working, and sometimes it's a slow turtle-like move. myfootballcamps.com/D1, and that's for the high school and it's myfootballcaps.com/transfer portal, I believe it is. Portal, transfer portal.
D1 hyphen transfer right below
Oh,
it.
D1 hyphen transfer portal.
Yeah.
And the reason I say this, we've had some guys like Carson Kruger find their FCS home. We've had some guys see additional Power Five interest, throughout this process. We've had some younger guys, 2024, 2025, 2026s, get more interest because of the promotional program. And what it is, it's we will socially promote you through our social media channels, and all the coaches are on there. And any coach that wasn't following me or the portal feed before this massive nightmare that happened last week with the portal, they're following now, and they're going to see your stuff. And we've always talked about how it's like the first time it's like who's this, second time it's like who's this, the third time it's like okay who's this, I got to look, and then the fourth and fifth time that's where it starts to get serious. So our buddy Sam Hartman, who was honestly throughout all of our clients, for me was not a success initially. He came to us when he was in the state of Texas. He's an offensive lineman, could play D line as well, 6'5", 290, really strong kid. But it was like he came to us with some D2 interest. And I'm like, okay, based on the film, we're going to get this kid at least some FCS interest. And it wasn't happening. And he moved to Oregon, and that really hurt it as well. And I was puzzled by it. Not that I think he's a Power Five, starter or a 4-star recruiter or anything like that, but I thought there would be more interest. So then we started talking last week, he and I, about JUCOs and preps. What if he wanted to take another year and continue this process? And he got a JUCO offer from, I believe, Navarro, which is a great JUCO, and it was like most of his stuff was covered. And he got official D2 offers,
Yep.
but he got what he wanted last week, which was a preferred walk-on offer from Oregon State, a program he loves, a physical program. Kids like him are perfect for it because this is a program that doesn't recruit 4 and 5-star kids. This is a program with Jonathan Smith, who just got a huge extension, as he should. They recruit grinders and hard workers and guys that are overachievers. So now he gets to go there. He gets to, he'll work scout team. He'll work as a preferred walk-on. He'll try to work his way into the depth chart. But worst case scenario for him now, he gets experience there and he falls back to FCS. And you had mentioned off air, Portland State should have offered this kid, and they should have, no doubt. And now I think the worst case scenario is if he doesn't work out at Oregon State, he can get that Portland State offer or something similar at an FCS level. So that's a success story, but this one was like, this took a long time. You remember he was one of our guys in the summer.
He was one of our first guys, definitely.
Yeah.
I think the lesson too on this is for the high school recruits, which is very different than the transfer portal recruits. For the high school recruits, it's a persistent, consistent process. And those are the two kind of words I would think: persistent and consistent, meaning the way recruiting is going, because the transfer portal is an immediate thing for the guys in college and they have to like make decisions quick on guys, and the guys who are left back might need help. And that's why we're here to help from that standpoint. But that's all a fast process. Because they have to focus on that and the immediacy of it, the high school football recruiting is more of a grind process. Obviously, the guys who are mega stars, that's a different deal. But even the guys that are Division One or borderline Division One FCS, it's still going to be a grind process. And I have a kid that plays for me and on our Boardwalk Beach 707 club, the New Jersey Player of the Year, Michael Ford. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's the New Jersey Player of the Year this year, 2024. And he was great like all spring, and he was a great player as a sophomore last year. But he only had West Virginia and Maryland offers at the time. Now he's the New Jersey Player of the Year. He rushed from quarterback, rushed for like 2,500 yards, threw for like 1,500. He's an athlete guy, could play a lot of different positions. He's 6'1", 215, and fast. And now he picked up 2 more offers. He's going to be 20 offer guy. I mean, he's New Jersey Player of the Year. Very rarely he's the number 1 player in New Jersey. Not a 20 offer guy, but he's a 20 offer guy, and he's got all the measurables. and he's going to explode. But a guy like him, as he's literally the New Jersey Player of the Year, it's been a process for him that he's had to go through. So a guy who's probably going to end up with 10 to 20 offers, who's a 2024, still had to go through a process. And the lesson on that is it unless you are automatically slam dunk immediately, meaning you're 6'5" and you're 210, and you're a receiver where they can physically see the tools right away. Those guys pick up offers. Your even Division I players are going to have to go through a little bit of a process, and that's because the world has changed in recruiting. There is the balance of the transfer portal. They're going to offer guys during this December time period, see what happens there. They're going to offer at the high school level slam dunks, but then you're going to get into the process where there's going to be the grind on some of those guys that are going to get offered over a period of time at the high school recruits. That's just the reality situation because they're going to hold back a few scholarships for the spring on guys that they're going to, some guys are going to end out of spring ball, leave their team. They're going to pick up a few transfers filled up with that. So that's just kind of the nature of it. And the reason why I kind of went through that process is because it's okay. That's one of the things that like we want recruits to know. It's okay. And in this world, getting someone that can help over time in the right way, like we're doing with social media promotion, which I think is really the way to go. Like it's just that's where everybody is. That's where everybody's going to be. And especially on Twitter, even though obviously we utilize all the platforms because we hit everything, but especially on Twitter, if you think about where guys in their 30s and 40s and 50s are going to live, it's going to be Twitter. Like you're not going to have 50-year-old guys checking Instagram constantly. They'll have the grad assistants doing that, but Twitter really helps a tremendous amount because those videos get out there and they all follow us on there.
It's funny about Instagram though. I get more complaints from coaches about stuff I put up on Instagram than I do on anything else.
That's interesting. Really?
I
Why?
know because it's a younger person's demographic. I mean, it's it's 15 to 25.
Yeah.
So when I put something on Instagram, I feel kind of safe sometimes because I'm like, there's no way a 50-something-year-old head football coach is going to see this. And then all of a sudden, and I don't think, like to your point, I don't think they're on Instagram, but I think someone is.
Their GAs are, and
And then they'll see it, and then I'll get a screen grab of what I put up, and then a complaint, like why'd you do this? Thought we were boys, thought we were friends. I'm like, we're not friends. If we were friends, you would have hired me or given me some of your millions of dollars, Mister. Just got a $10 million freaking contract. If we were boys, we'd be hanging out. And I'm a media member. I speak what I speak, and you're a coach, and you have to deal with the good and bad of that. So it is funny because Instagram is like one of those things where it's monitored very closely. I don't think TikTok is as much yet.
It will be. Yeah.
TikTok is more, you can certainly get a video to get a lot of attention on TikTok, go viral on TikTok, then be pulled from TikTok to Instagram or to Facebook or to Twitter.
Correct.
And so that's why TikTok's important. And you have a ton of followers on TikTok. And we do that because, that's where you can go viral more so than Instagram or Twitter. But Twitter is definitely, it's our sweet spot. It gets attention, but nothing is guaranteed for anybody. If you have, 30 offers, you don't need us. If you have no offers, then you do. And sometimes if you have 5 offers and you want 10, we can certainly help that.
Walker Meese is my example. That kid is just
right.
rolling through offers. I mean, rolling.
Well, Jaffe is another one.
Yeah.
So, I mean, those guys, came to us and they already had their secure full scholarships offers and they wanted more. Or sometimes they want to increase their notoriety in the recruiting world. Rankings are often important to, kids, and to parents and stuff like that. And they want to raise the attention of their son who's, getting 5 offers, but they feel it should be a 30 offer. So that's good for them as well. And then there's the opposite, which is, the guys who have no offers, no interest. If this program were, available last year at this time, which it wasn't, and Sam Hartman came to us last year at this time, and he couldn't have. But if he did, I think we'd be talking about an even better situation for him. But the fact that he went from nobody had ever heard of this guy, ever. I'd never heard of him. When his order came through, I had to research and look him up, see who he was, what he did. Nobody knew about him, and he's a 2023 that we got in the summer, which is late. For him to land at a Power Five school and fulfill that dream is awesome. So he's a success.
There's no doubt about it. Absolutely. And it's amazing one by one, right? You got Kruger, you got if we point to like immediate success stories that actually have tangible stuff, right? You got Kruger, you got Hartman out, you have obviously Parker Meese and Jaffe, right? You have uh uh he, you know he wants more, but I already see Ronner is starting to get a lot of attention. Um, and I think he deserves more attention. It's always a little tougher in a place like Nebraska just because of its location, but he's starting like I see the people are inviting on campus. And I mentioned this. Like, he just has to go through that process. I mean, that's just to me,
It's a painful process.
right?
He's talented enough, and he will get the attention needed. And it's great that he came to us early, and that's what he should do. And now he's on the radar. But like most quarterbacks, Arch Manning doesn't have to go to colleges and throw for people. But most quarterbacks, and I'm talking about most quarterbacks that are in the NFL now, that are starters, um, had to go and throw for people. Justin Herbert was on last night. Amazing talent. He had to go throw for people to get his offers, and he didn't have a ton of them. And he ended up at Oregon, and now he's a starter in the NFL. Blah blah blah. But you have to go and throw, and so that's what's going to happen this spring for Carson Rauner. A good season statistically, not as good as he would like because it's not as much of a passing offense, and he was out of the game quite a bit when they got ahead. But that doesn't matter. He's got the foundation now, and he's going to go out in the spring to the camps. He's going to hit the camp circuit, and then he's going to do the summer camps, and he's going to, throw for people, and he's going to be fine. But you can sense how frustrating the process is for parents because it's not an easy process. It's very you need a lot of patience with it, and you need a lot of mental fortitude to go through it. Um, so it's going to happen for some people to different levels, and it's hard to sort of be patient with it. But I think the slow burn, as you're talking about, is key. And then the portal is a completely different animal. What's happening with the portal is that a ton of kids entered last week. Kids can continue to enter. We're over 2,000 people, 2,000 players from FCS and FBS in the portal now since August 1st, which is the cycle. This week, a bunch take visits, a bunch take spots. We've seen a ton of commitments. Next week, they'll take visits, and the following weekend is the dead period. And then once the dead period comes, that's when kids are really going to start needing a lot of help because spots will be taken, the early signing period will be over. Schools will have a very good idea of what their 85 scholarship team is going to look like. And that's when you're going to really need to be special to find one of those additional scholarships at the school you want. And that's where you're going to need us in our promotion program for the portal. And that one is going to be more desperation. High school, we got time, you know. Bryce Enlow got an offer recently.
Yep.
He would have never got an offer without this program. I don't believe. Um, it was slow, and we had time with him, even though he's a 2023. The portal, you got no time. So you're going to need to sign up for this promotion and hit it at the very least over the holidays. Probably now, but at the very least over the holidays.
I think that's exactly right because you need to lead into the new year with a situation where you can really begin to to get recognized and get offered, and there's no doubt about it. There's no doubt about it. So, um, let's kind of move to. You can go to myfootballcamps.com/D1 for high school. You go to myfootballcamps.com/D1 hyphen transfer. Um, did I say transfer? Yeah. So D1 hyphen transfer for transfers. I wanted to talk about it and get your input, okay? And I started to kind of talk to you about it a little bit. But the story, I'm trying to think if I can pull it up somewhere where I had it. I guess, I mean, I don't want to play my exact TikTok video I did on it, but long and the short of it is Tennessee. There's a rumor. I don't know if it's true, but they suspended a linebacker. You know that. That's kind of a fact, right? One of the
Hmm.
strong linebackers. Suppose
I think he was suspended for one game, honestly,
one
but
game, correct.
suspended. Yeah.
So supposedly there was like a mini mutiny or a mini like we're not gonna play hard type of thing because it was a fight with an offensive player. I don't know whether it was the starting. I'm assuming it was the starting quarterback. That's what basically was put out there. Some, but nobody knows if it was the starting quarterback fighting with the backup quarterback over NIL, and the linebacker interjected, or the linebacker was fighting with the starting quarterback and the backup QB interjected on the starting quarterback side. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
we don't know the exact details on it, but there's something in there. And which leads to my bigger point is like everyone knows that this was going to happen at some point. If this is true, we don't know if it's true, because obviously that's just kind of what's been put out there. But it brings up a valid possible issue down the line, right? If you're, I think about where I play. You know, when I played at UConn, when I was originally a running back, okay, I was a fullback, and I just think among the starting tailbacks, right? We used to use two tailbacks, right? If one guy was getting more than the other, that would have been a problem. You know what I'm
Oh
saying?
yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
just remember being in the running back room, and then when I moved to linebackers, are very. When I moved to linebacker, that was a totally different them. We used to when I became a linebacker from being a fullback, running backs were the prima donnas. Whether we were even the fullbacks were more prima donna-ish than the defensive players. When I moved to defense, we were almost resentful to the offensive players in the sense that they would get obviously the interviews, and we were doing a lot of the hard work, right? So it's interesting that this happens because it brings up a point where is this going to continue to be an issue? If even if I'm getting 20K, but you're getting 100K or you're getting a mill, and it's not an issue if everything's going well, but we lose a game. Let's call that. This is when these things happen, right? We lose a game. You go up there. You had a bad game. You're getting a million. Uh, Me as a defensive player, pissed off because you had a bad game. Now I say something to you. You say something back to me. There's a fight, right? I'm getting 20K. You're getting a mill, or you're getting a half. I mean, I don't think Hendon Hooker is getting as much as the guy that's going to come in, Nico. I might,
Right.
but he's probably getting some because he had such a great year, and I'm sure
Sure.
giving him stuff.
I think
That
he signed with. I think he signed with the Mustard. Because remember the Evolve stands for Mustard canisters at Lane Kiffin, so I think he signed a really lucrative deal with Goldens,
a
which
goal
is funny. But
that
yeah,
is funny.
Hooker's making money. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I think that's an issue that is a it brings me to the staffing thing. So people were like, "Hey, there should be an NIL staffing group." Now people are starting to bring in staff there. There should be a transfer portal staffing group, right? I don't know where the rub meets the road on these things, but the truth is these are pro organizations. We can call them in the NCAA. They're in whatever league they're in. Okay, you can say whatever you want even though it's a college, these are pro organizations. And in a pro organization, you have person in charge of sponsorships, right? The person in charge of personnel, the person in charge of marketing, the person in charge of player development. All of these things throughout the organization in the NFL's case, $1 billion enterprise. In college football case, $500 million enterprises. Not a billion, maybe. Some might be on their way to being a billion, but $500 million enterprise, right? So They have to have staffs in those situations. And there's no doubt in my mind that nobody is equipped at all levels to be able to handle these kind of things.
No, not yet. And I don't know, budgetary, but there's still schools digging out from COVID. We hear about these TV deals and how much money there is and all that stuff, but you got to remember that a lot of that is allocated to the university, and it depends on the university as to who's putting what back into their program. Um, I think it's a situation where can you afford enough staff to handle this, and do you want to build that out the way you talked about? I think with the portal, it's important to have a staff that focuses on that and a separate staff that focus on high school recruiting because they really do end up merging. If you have one staff, they're going to be scrambling through the portal entries of FCS in late November, FBS in early December, and trying to get a head start on 2024 and close out 2023. Now, a separate NIL wing is necessary, but I don't think even that's going to help the babysitting issues that are going to have to occur because anytime there's a discrepancy in salary, there's resentment. Even when things are going well, team unity is very hard to keep constant. Working at a large company, obviously myself for many, many years and making more than everybody else for many, many years, there was always, resentment. There's always undermining. There was always attempts to diminish out of jealousy or whatever the deal is. People who make less are going to try to bring down people who make more. And it really defeats the team atmosphere. Now, you're going to have team players. I'm a team guy. I'm here for the team. And that's legitimately true. I don't care that I'm making, $1 million less than the quarterback. And I don't care that I'm a wide receiver and I'm making him look good by making great catches. I'm a team guy. You get those people, but human nature says there's going to be selfish people, and those selfish people may be resentful of somebody else making some more, especially if they don't perform. Now, Hendon Hooker had a great year, tremendous year. The only downfalls year the offense had this season was truly the Georgia game. I mean, they lost to South Carolina, and the defense was horrible, and the linebacker was suspended for that particular game. But it wouldn't have helped. I mean, the defense was awful. They got carved up. Hooker got hurt in that game. But the Georgia game, your number one team in the nation, you go into Georgia, biggest game of everybody's lives. The offense doesn't perform very well. Maybe the defense feels they're keeping it in, keeping them in the game, and resentment ensues after your first loss, and maybe you get a situation like that. It's going to get worse because we haven't even scratched the surface of NIL yet. The Nico Imalea, those offers, $8 million, it's made up garbage. He's not guaranteed $8 million. There's no $8 million high school quarterback. There's no company or booster club out there that's that dumb to throw that much money at them, unless their name's Arch Manning, unless they have a huge national brand to that level where you're the nephew of two Hall of Fame quarterbacks. But there's a lot of money. So, for example, Cormani McClain is a cornerback who was supposed to go to Florida. He ended up going to Miami at the last second, and he hasn't signed yet, but he committed to Miami for a better NIL deal. When he was about to commit to Florida, the sources told me the inner workings of Florida for all those D-backs were, where's mine? This kid's, rumored to be making, whatever it is, $1.5 million. I've been starting here for a couple of years. Where's my money? And so those type of rumblings occurred. Then he goes to Miami, and the D-backs there all suck. They really do. There's not a good one that I've seen. And they're all like, where's my money? So the answer to them is go to the portal. You don't deserve money. You stink. But the Florida situation is like, okay, you're pretty good. We don't want to lose you to the portal. How do we handle this when this kid's rumored to be making this much money? Do you tell the DBs he's not making this much money and sort of give the details of his actual deal? Maybe, but they're not going to believe you. They're going to believe what they read. And then you're going to have a divided room where a guy like that could come into a D-back room at a school and instantly be resented and thought of as a hotshot. That happened before NAL with the 5-star kids, just because of rankings. Now it's even worse because they're making money. So this is going to continue, is my opinion.
I think a couple of possible solutions, and you mentioned it, I think last time, was the GM role, which I think Vanderbilt does with Barton, if I'm not mistaken, with Barton Simmons. I think he's quote unquote a GM, right?
Yeah, similar. Yep.
I don't
Player
know what the
personnel, player personnel guys now are GMs, so to speak.
right. I guess it's like a player personnel on person on steroids, right? So is kind of GM. Now I don't know exactly what their roles are, but I'm using GM as the term here. But someone who manages the payroll, manages the players and how they feel about that. Like you see it in the NFL, like if the NFL player has an issue with the coach, a lot of times he may jump to the GM because if he doesn't feel it's getting solved, because the GM can obviously has obviously a relationship with the coach. They're going to have a conversation, say, "Hey, listen, he doesn't feel this is being solved with you. What do we do here? What should we do here?" And they kind of work it together because the GM is technically the coach's boss. Now, in college, it's flipped. In college, the head coach is the GM's boss.
Right.
So that's where it's different. So I don't know if the term is GM, right?
They do
Um,
call Barton a GM. I looked it up.
yeah.
He's director of personnel, but his technical title is general manager.
Okay. Okay. Like I think that it's interesting. Is there a spot between the AD and the head coach? Now it's obviously going to be a fairly expensive spot, but is that spot a kind of GM down the line? Is that guy a spot in between the two that manages? Now, obviously, it's more for football and basketball because obviously basketball eventually, it's less people, but they probably deal with some issues as well. But is that person there to manage the football and basketball, so to speak, kind of issues where the coach can have conversations with them without having to go to the AD? Because I think the last thing the AD who manages the whole entire enterprise, even though football and basketball are one and two, the last thing he wants to do is get involved every day on NAL deals, right? Like that's got to be a headache for an athletic director that has to manage donors and all these guys with big money to get the money flowing through. It's kind of like almost even a conflict. Is there a need down the line for that person kind of almost, I don't know if he's over to the coach or lateral to the coach, but someone who manages that, right? Because it's almost like the AD and then there's a huge gap to the head coach. You know what I'm saying? It's like I'm not a huge structure person. Obviously, I run my company flat, right? But there's me and there's a lot of people. But in the way that this thing is structured, maybe there is a need for that person who kind of manages that process that they can all have conversations with, that players can go to separately, and that coaches can solve problems with. Because I can't see, first of all, who as a coach, that's a never-ending headache. I would love to have someone that could solve some of those issues. You know what I mean? Where we're like, hey, this is the guy's issue, and he feels comfortable going to somebody else besides me, who's going to dictate whether he plays or not. Right? You come to me, and I'm the head coach, and you're causing a problem. There's a chance that could affect your playing time. But that GM, that may not be the case.
Yeah, I think you're going to start seeing a lot of things staffed out in that manner. Um, again, can they afford, can you put a guy making 80 grand a year in that situation? Will you be able to afford somebody who, can do that? How much is he going to get paid? Where does he fall in the hierarchy? You have your recruiting personnel guy, you have your NIL guy. Who's above who? Are they equal? And how do they report directly to the head coach, who reports to the athletic director? But oftentimes the athletic director reports to the coach. Where that's the coach is obviously 10 times more powerful than the AD. All these things have to be worked out, and the only way to work them out is to do it by experience. You have to have these locker room fights and these disagreements to learn how to best handle it, because you're going to get true valuable information from hearing what this guy's saying, what the linebacker's saying, what the quarterback's saying, what the witnesses are saying to this, that, and the other, and how do we avoid this from happening in the future. And you're not going to do it right away. You're going to make mistakes, and it's going to be growing pains, and it's going to take a long time to figure that out. But locker rooms are going to become more. They're going to become more divided before they become less divided. I mean, this is going to get worse, and it's going to be a situation where you could have an argument like that, and a kid decides to tweet out, "I'm jumping in the portal" when the window occurs. And we talk about this window, this 45 days. You have to wait until after the conference championship games in December to do that. But you can announce it at any time, and you can also change your mind prior to the window. But I think you're going to see a lot based on what I see from a generational difference. Kids will overreact more now to anything. You're talking about a generation that dealt with, which was a different generation than now. Now it's more of an immediate gratification. Kids are much more likely to transfer. They're much more likely to give up on a situation. They're much more likely to say screw it. Um, and so that's where I think NIL and the portal are going to sort of meet. The one thing I've noticed about the portal is that the kids going to the portal aren't really NIL driven. Um, the high school kids are NIL driven. The high school kids are getting better offers. Now you're going to have a Devin Leary at NC State who's going to be able to command a pretty good amount of money. Caleb Williams in the portal last year command a little bit of money, a great deal of money actually. But a lot of the kids who go in the portal are going there for a reason. They weren't playing. They're homesick. They got off-field troubles. Whatever. They don't have as much to sell on an NIL level as a high school kid. So the funny part about this is if you go into the portal without NIL or without that as being, a big factor, you go to a place and you're starting ahead of a high school kid who's got an NIL deal that's making much, much more than you, who's 3 years younger than you're going to be pissed. And it's going to lead to more situations. So the more kids can switch schools and the more NIL comes into play with the high school kids, you're going to run into these situations over and over again. And luckily, it's not my problem. I don't care how they solve it. That's why they get millions. I was thinking about it today, thinking about Mike Leach and thinking about how I have an affinity for the work ethic of college coaches. And I sort of defend college coaches. I criticize them greatly for missing on recruits or poor play calls or, their job not being done. But I never criticize them for a lack of effort because I know how hard it is to recruit all the time and to work all the time and to never stop recruiting. And with the portal now, it's worse. But I also think a lot of these guys make $5 million a year. And you know what? This is what they signed up for, and this is what they have to manage and navigate. And I don't feel sorry for them. So it's a fine line. I mean, you make the money, you got to figure this out, and you got to figure it out to the best of your ability. And if it doesn't work out, Josh Heupel's done a great job. Great job. Guy's going to be worth a ton of money at Tennessee. He's going to be there for a long time. But he's also making a ton of money. So it's his job to figure out why this is occurring and why it would occur and how to not make it occur again. It's not my job.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. It's a difficult situation. There's no oversight from the NCAA that's going to make a difference on this. So I mean that cat's out of the bag.
They're not staffed for that. It's not the NCAA socks. They're not staffed for that. I mean, we're talking about, look at the portal. It's going to make the stronger. There's so much tampering. We had a kid last week announce his commitment to a school before he went into the portal. And he went in the portal 10 days later. Now, technically, you're not supposed to be able to contact a kid until he's in the portal. This kid had already talked to multiple schools. He got multiple offers. He committed to a school. Then he went in the portal. That's illegal. That's an NCAA violation. The school he committed to should be on probation or being investigated, but there's nobody to investigate this. And I saw an article the other day from, I forget, it was a college coach who said, if you're not getting ahead of this situation, especially with the quarterbacks, and essentially by getting ahead means tampering, then you're doing a disservice to your program because everybody else is. So if you're waiting for a kid to enter the portal when you've known he's going to do it for months and months and months, and I'll give you Hudson Card as an example from Texas. We've all known when Quinn Ewers transferred to Texas, he was on portal watch. He didn't go in that time. He didn't go in this season, but we all knew he was going into December. We've probably known that since last summer or last spring. If you're not tampering and talking to that kid ahead of time, then you're not doing your job. And the NCAA has no way to stop it. NIL is the same thing. There's no way to enforce any of this stuff.
There's no answer from the NCAA side, and there's not going to be. And people who keep asking for it are crazy. I see this all the time. NCAA's gonna. There's nothing for them to do. It's over. The conferences can probably do something down the line because they have a kitty of money that's getting divvied out, and they may have some influence on it because the athletic directors can get together within a conference and say, "Hey, we agree to do this." But there's nothing that can be done from the NCAA. The NCAA is basically a shell organization, in my opinion.
It's
That
going away. It's going
yeah,
away
I mean,
too.
it probably works for FCS D2 and D3. It probably works there, but at the
No,
highest level, yeah,
it's going away. And either it's going to become a massive corporation that oversees all of this stuff and run like a business, or it's going to be conferences or individual businesses. So the SEC does business their way, the Big Ten does the business their way. But that's a good way to police it. Now, it's not a good way to police it between conferences. If the Big Ten's tampering with a kid in the SEC, what are you going to do? You
right.
can call Kevin Warren and say, "What the hell?" If he's let's say he's the CEO of the Big Ten corporation, but within your own conference, if you've got that type of cannibalization and there's tampering occurring, and a kid from Texas A&M's going to Arkansas, and he was tampered with like crazy, or the opposite, he's going from Arkansas to Texas A&M. Then when you're a corporation overseeing the SEC, you can address that and
Right.
enforce it. But you won't do it across, the Big Ten. Honestly, they're going to pretend they care. But let's say Ohio State steals a kid from Florida and tampered with him for 6 months.
They don't care.
Well, who's going to, you think the Big Ten's going to slap Ohio State on the wrist for doing that? No, because probably the SEC did it to another Big Ten school prior to that. So I don't know what the solution is. I really don't care what the solution is. I don't. I was getting a question from one of my writers the other day, and he's a young kid, and he's really inquisitive, and he was asking me questions. I was in a bad mood when he texted me as usual, and he asked me, he's like, "So when do this is out of control, this portal stuff and NIL stuff, and when do you think this is going to be fixed?" And I said, "It's never going to be fixed." And he's like, "What?" And I said, "It's just never going to be fixed." He goes, "Well, how long is the NCAA going to last?" I go, "Not long, but it's going to be a few years before they're disbanded. And then individual corporations will probably propped up for the conferences, or you'll have one, massive corporation overseeing all of them. But it's not going to change anything." And he's like, "So you're saying to me college football is going to be an absolute mess forever?" I go, "Yeah, it is, because you brought in free agency and now pay for play, and you don't have a collective bargaining agreement. You don't have an NFL, type of a corporation status. You don't have everybody moving in the same direction. Um, and I don't see that ever happening. I don't see them ever being able to prop up, the CFFL, the College Football League, where it's a national conglomerate with players associations and free agency deadlines and salary caps and all that stuff. How are they ever going to get that done when every entity, the NFL owns 32 teams essentially. The owners own the teams, but 32 teams are under that NFL umbrella, all of them equal. The Texans may suck and the Cowboys may be worth the most money, but they're all under that umbrella equal. You've got 100 plus teams. You got 60 plus Power Five teams. How are you going to manage that under one umbrella when they're all doing different things and they're all fighting for their own agenda?
The issue is you brought it up really well. From a business standpoint, the NFL is the corporation and they are franchises that they've sold. It's a
Right.
franchising business that they sold in each state to these.
Chick fil A.
It's a
Chick fil A.
Chick-fil-A model, right? And so they've sold these franchises, okay? And it's probably even more McDonald's than for Chick-fil-A because Chick-fil-A has a little more kind of daily say on everything, maybe more McDonald's, but it's the franchise model. The the Colleges are individual corporations. They're their own corporation. So each one of these are individual corporations. So it's Mike Farrell Corporation, Dave Schuman Corporation, John Smith Corporation, all being loosely operated by a separate corporation that really has no control over them. And then the third part that makes it unique is there's another entity, which is the Big Ten Conference, which is a corporation that they're a member of. So they have a membership fee that they pay to have comparable principles among all of the individual organizations. To make that like the NFL, a franchise model, is so complicated and so difficult to get. Why would anyone, if I was Ohio State, I'm already giving money to this membership that I'm getting money kicked back to me. Why would I want to pay a franchise fee now to another organization and have to give, I don't know, 8% of my income or 10% of my income to that organization so it operates as a management tool of me? No, I don't want any more management. I'm already doing less management. No one's ever going to opt for more management when they have less management already. It's impossible. You know what I mean? If you're Texas or Ohio State or Georgia or Alabama with $1 billion enterprise, I'm already giving money because of TV away to the conference. I'm not going to give any more of that money away to anybody else. I just don't see it, you know?
Yeah, and it makes me think of the Securities Exchange Commission and stock market and corporations having to be overseen from a legal aspect to protect the consumer, which is a federal government funded situation. You're not going to get federal funding to oversee college football, even if it is a business, even if the consumer can be hurt or jilted or taken advantage of, but they're never going to treat this as a legal entity in that respect. That's what Emmert wanted. He wanted NIL to be government run. He kept praying that Congress was going to look at this thing. And before the states implemented their individual NIL, he was hoping that they would come in and there would be national implications to NIL that's where you could get a government instituted cap on the amount of money kids can make per state, this, that, and the other. The federal government looked at it and said, no, we don't need this problem. This is your problem. You figure it out. And that's when he resigned. And he came up with no plan. I mean, him and Bosley had a plan. It sucked, but they had a plan in place for NIL. They scrapped it. Emmert quit. He didn't quit that moment, but he quit. And he was kind of run out. And it was like, okay, NIL's here. I forget what it was, July 1st, I think it was. NIL's here. Everybody's free to do whatever they want. And that's kind of where we're at now. So it's never going to be governed from a government standpoint, which is why we are protected from, Ponzi schemes and Enrons of the world. Well, you're not protecting the consumer from Ohio State. So it's going to have to be individually managed, and that's virtually impossible. So listen, again, I want to watch football on Saturdays and enjoy it, and I still do. I want to follow recruiting and enjoy it, and I still do. The portal, it's an adjustment. Now 25% of kids are projected to be starters next year from a different school. That's 1/4 of your roster is going to have a starter from a school where it didn't start with. Okay, I can adjust to that. NAL, I don't give a crap about. I don't care what Caleb Williams is making. I don't care what he's selling. If he wants to paint his fingernails for a gas station or an oil company, I don't give a crap. And that's great for him, good for him. But I don't want to hear it. I don't care about it. It doesn't matter to me. It's going to affect recruiting in the portal, but that's not my problem. That's the problem of the coaches. So Cormani McLean, whatever Miami did to get him to come off of his favorite school to Florida to go to Miami, and now there were rumors this weekend Alabama was going to come in with a bigger offer. Good luck. Good luck. If he's very good. He's my number one cornerback in the country. He's a top 10 player in the country. If he's worth it, have at it, but good luck because any kid who is NIL driven is going to go to that school and he's going to have his hand out within 3 months, or he's going to want to transfer because he ain't playing. I'm making all this money and not playing. I want out. Or I'm making all this money and I'm starting as a freshman, but I was told by my uncle Billy I should be making more money. Where's my money? And then all the kids in that defensive back room are going to be like, this kid's making that much money. I made 6 tackles in this game. He made 2. I got a pass deflection. He got burnt. Where's my money? And so good luck to college coaches in dealing with that garbage. But I don't care. I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to hear anything. When I see these Nico deals and this Jaden Rashada kid who committed to Miami initially and then flipped to Florida and all these NIL deals, it's $5 million. I don't care. Couldn't care less. Make all the money you want. I'm not resentful towards you for it.
Oh, yeah.
But that part of it, I don't care. And I really don't care, honestly, what Dak Prescott makes per game or that he's a $40 million quarterback. I mean, when he sucks, it makes me think, wow, you're paying $40 million a year for this guy. But that's not my money, and I don't care. What I want is the Cowboys to win,
Yep.
and I want to enjoy football on Sundays, and I can do that. Yeah, I'm a Cowboys fan.
I am too.
Yeah, I've been a Cowboys fan.
We get along.
Well, I'm a quiet Cowboys fan because they haven't done anything since 1995, you know? And I watched the game yesterday, and they suck. They suck. They haven't had a good quarterback since Aikman because Tony Romo is a stat stuffer, and he sucks at the end. And Dak Prescott's a stat stuffer, and he sucks at the end.
Tony Romo's a great analyst, though.
Great analyst, and he's going to make more money as an analyst, and so is Troy Aikman, than they ever did as players.
Yep.
But he's not. He was a good quarterback. Don't get me wrong.
Right. He was.
But he was not. He was frustrating as a Cowboy fan because I always felt, in the end of the regular season he was good, and then when he got in the playoff, he sucked. And Dak is like, I don't know what I'm going to get from Dak. They were favored by 17 yesterday, and I'm very into, gambling lines and sports gambling. I do a podcast on the weekends about college football gambling and stuff. And I'm very, but I wouldn't lay 17 for the Cowboys against a 1-11 Texans team because Dak is good for potentially 2 horrible, dumb interceptions every game. And I really don't know what to expect.
When you watch Dak and Romo remind me of this in a different way too, you keep feeling like you see things and you're like, this guy should be an elite quarterback. They do things that you're like, they should be an elite quarterback. And you keep getting this feeling like they are not like getting there. They're just not getting there, which Troy Aikman did. He was like people like it's. I always laugh when people say Troy Aikman. Oh, and well, his era was a little different. Like we ran, Emmitt Smith the ball on a lot of zone and power, and that was the game, right? But he really was a leader. Like I love the back, and you as a Cowboys fan, you can appreciate this. I love when I see the back scene stuff when he transitioned from Jimmy Johnson to
Barry Switzer.
He was very frustrated. His career, he had a couple of good more years, but it started going downhill because he said that he had to become the enforcer because Barry Switzer wasn't willing to be the enforcer, and Jimmy Johnson was the enforcer, so he could be the good cop. And he said when he had to be the bad cop and under the Switzer era, it really didn't work. But the fact that he was so cognizant of that, you know what I'm saying? Like really understood the interpersonal dynamics of what made a team good, not just his on the field play, but what the other players needed. Like it's no wonder he's such a great analyst. I mean, he really understands how other guys like what Michael Irvin needed. Like when Michael Irvin, he
very difficult.
Michael Irvin in the butt. He wanted to be, hey, Mike, right. I know you did blow this weekend, but we need you this weekend to play well.
Right. Right. And he calmed him down because he's a volatile personality. Emmett's a straight up dick.
I don't know.
He is. Trust me when I tell you.
I love.
But he was the epitome of a team player.
Yeah.
And a guy who went out there with a separated shoulder. If you remember that game, it just was amazing in every shape or form. Now kind of a dick. Irvin was just a volatile, he's one of the best blocking wide receivers you're ever going to see in your life, and he's a team guy in that aspect.
Oh yeah,
But if he didn't get the ball enough, he would become very volatile, and he would get very frustrated and animatedly frustrated in games and on TV. Aikman's very, very smooth. Then you got Dion on that team. You got Charles Haley on that team. You've got some really different
Alvin
personalities.
Harper.
You
Yeah.
have to manage all that as a quarterback, plus complete passes, and be extremely accurate. And honestly, Romo and Dak. I mean, Des Bryant, yeah, he's a headache. Dak, C.D. Lamb, he's a headache. I know just from knowing him in high school. And Zeke's a headache. I get it. There's headaches, but you have to manage all that and be consistent in your play. And that's why Aikman was so successful doing it, because he could command the respect of people because he was tough as nails. I mean, the dude probably had 10 concussions, 10 concussions minimum. Him and Steve Young, they got their brains splattered so many times. And this was before concussion protocol, before CTE, before anything. You just got your bell rung. You'd be over there. There'd be no concussion protocol. They ask you what your name is and what state you grew up in and all that. And then they would, sometimes you'd see smelling salts and they get back in there. Tough as nails, never hurt, and always, consistently in even keel and good. So you can command respect like that. Dak is a guy that strikes me as a guy who wants that respect, who wants everybody to like him, and who does too much in that respect to try to get liked, but isn't even keel in his play. So he loses respect of players on the team. Romo strikes me as a guy who is very affable, very nice, very funny, but nobody really respected him because he pissed down his leg in the playoffs. So to be Aikman is hard, and that's why he's a Hall of Famer and why he has 3 Super Bowls. As a Cowboy fan, it's extremely frustrating to see, what I'm seeing. But I still enjoy the games. I mean, they won yesterday against the Texans, and I don't give a crap what Dak makes. I don't give a crap what Ezekiel Elliott's goddamn guaranteed contract was. I don't give a crap if they're overpaying this guy or that guy. And in college football, I don't care either. I don't care what your deal is. I just want to watch football and enjoy it. So NIL to
I
me
love
is
the Cowboys, by the way, is Pollard.
what?
Pollard was a
He's
huge
awesome.
gem for them.
Memphis, dude. Memphis overlooked. Zeke was a top 4 pick. I think he was fourth. And he got the big contract. But he started to wear out, as most running backs do. Then you bring a Tony Pollard in, he's a great compliment to him. Um, you know, the personnel is there to be successful. Yesterday was very confusing because Dan Quinn's a good defensive coordinator, but they weren't getting after the passer. I believe 3 different quarterbacks played for the Texans, none of them good. I scouted Jeff Driscoll and Davis Mills. Davis Mills was good in high school, but he kind of reached a point of where he topped out. Kyle Allen was a 5-star in high school, same thing, topped out. They didn't bring any pressure. They didn't get a pass rush on him. They allowed him to do that. Chris Moore, who I've never heard of before in my life, had a career game. They played very weird and dumb, and that's what the Cowboys do. Against a crap opponent, they will play down to them. Against a good opponent, they will play up, except in the playoffs when they crap their pants.
I have one question for you. This is totally different, but you struck my mind on this, we've had a great conversation for over an hour. I want to let you go, but the you talked about how Kyle Allen topped out, and some of these 5-star that top out. Basically like at high school, they're almost at their peak. What do you think about? And a lot of parents, I see it all over the place. The kids who hold back in 8th grade or are a year older, do you think that's helpful? I'm just really curious of your opinion because I see it so much, and parents always ask all the time on this. And there's no one who I can think would know the answer on this or have a chance to know the answer more than anyone else than you. Do you think if a guy comes back a year and so now he's I don't know, he's going to graduate and he's going to be 19, right? He's a year older. Does that help them in the recruiting process, or does that have no effect? Coaches even look at that? I always want that because if I'm 19 and I enter and I'm pretty good versus I'm 18 and I enter college, and I'm pretty good. Like, what is the diff? Is there a difference? Is there that topping out an issue down and down the line?
They don't really.
I'm
There
curious.
have been a lot of kids. I mean, obviously, there've been a lot of kids, honestly, in New Jersey as well, who take that extra year, and sometimes that extra year is in sixth grade,
Right.
in seventh grade, and their parents are looking forward to, like, I want him to be a 17-year-old sophomore, so he has a physical advantage over other kids, and that's every state, but New Jersey is a good example. Coaches don't care about that. You know, apples to apples, if there's a 17-year-old kid versus an 18-year-old kid in the same class, they'd probably lean towards a 17-year-old kid because there's still more possibility for him to physically grow and get better. Um, it's really the opposite that I think your coaches are starting to get very wary of. The kids who accelerate. JT Daniels, great example of this. He missed his entire senior season because he accelerated graduation. Quinn Ewers, another one, accelerated. And they get in and they get in too quick and
Hmm.
they get over their head and they don't reach their potential. I think coaches are becoming wary of those guys more. Now they're still going to recruit JT Daniels. He was, the number three quarterback in that class behind Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields. But now he's at USC, Georgia, West Virginia. He's in the portal again. They're going to still recruit Quinn Ewers because his arm is a cannon. But now he's at Ohio State and he's at Texas, and he didn't have a great debut year. But the repeating grades doesn't really affect college coaches. It affects the NFL though, because if you are a 23-year-old senior, you're not gonna get drafted in the first round as opposed to a 21-year-old kid because you got less time to reach that 5-year first round guaranteed rookie contract. You're going to be 28 by the time that comes up, whereas a kid who's 21 is going to be 26. Huge difference. So the age thing, if I were to give advice to parents, don't push them forward. Um, don't hold them back. You
Stay where you
know,
are.
yeah, because that's the thing is like where you are is where you are, and you need to understand for your own purposes in getting better where you are. If you accelerate and you're playing all younger, you're the youngest kid who's playing older kids. That's how it works with the acceleration. Then you might think you're better. Then look at me, I'm playing these older kids, and I accelerated a grade, and I'm still better than all of them. And it may lead to you sort of stunting. The other opposite is if you're 17 and you're beating up on a bunch of 15-year-olds, you may think you're really good and you're not getting a true case of how you are, you know, freshman to freshman in college. You may come out of there and, Jesus, I beat the crap out of all these younger kids because I stayed back in third grade and sixth grade and I'm a 20-year-old freshman, but I haven't played anybody who's my age in a very long time. And here I am competing for a job as a true freshman, and these true freshmen are 18 and I'm 20, and they're better than me. And I never had to step up my game because I had that little advantage. So accelerate, decelerate, don't do either of it. Work at your level. If you're a 2023 kid, stay 2023, work against 2023 so you get a real clear vision of whether you're good enough or not. That's how I look at it.
That is that fascinating, fascinating. And I think about the Edmonds brothers. Like when I was an agent, I represented Trey Edmonds, who was the oldest, and he went in as a 23-year-old. And then I represented. I don't know if I lost you here. If you're there or not.
I got a phone call, so it kicks me
Oh,
out.
so he was 23 when he went into the NFL, but he was not drafted. Then the two younger brothers went in at 21, and the other one was 19.9 or whatever the youngest you could possibly be.
Oh, you're talking about the Edmonds brothers from
Yeah.
Virginia?
So
Yeah.
Trey and Terrell were younger. Terrell was 21. Tremaine was 19.9 or 20. I think he
He
turned
was super, super young coming in the
super young.
NFL.
But the guy who went the highest at the NFL was Tremaine because he was younger and he had the longer upside on the NFL because he was already talented at that level. And Terrell obviously went first round, the end of the first round. Trey, who was also a great player, but he was older. He went in as 23, was undrafted, right? So I thought that they were an interesting family example. I think most people would be better off falling where Terrell is, like you said, the correct age, right?
Right.
And so it was, and the only reason why Trey went in at 23 is because I think he redshirted a year, or so he was 5 years. He was older, right? But that affected down the line. Now, obviously, 99% of the people aren't going to be able to, even the Division One college guys aren't going to be able to play in the NFL. So I thought your advice is really, really well managed because you can continue to develop in college if you're the correct age at the correct grade. You'll continue to develop because you're used to competing against kids in your class and your age versus if you're older or younger. It's a harder management process mentally. I think it's a mental game, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you
Well,
don't know whether you're getting better or not, or you're just that far ahead of somebody.
yeah, and Tremaine is a good example too because okay, so he's the perfect scenario. He went 3 years at Virginia Tech and he ended up being a first rounder, and he's so young. He gets that extra couple of years for his contract because the shelf life of an NFL player, if you're good, is 10 years, right? So he's going to get that one rookie contract with the fifth year option. Then he's going to get to his second contract. And maybe he'll get to a third contract where that's where you make huge money in the second and third deals because he's young enough. Whereas a 24-year-old kid, a 23-year-old kid who's entering as as such, and especially with COVID now, a lot of kids are trying to decide whether they want to take that extra year of eligibility that they have, or do they want to really wait that long and go to the NFL as a 23-year-old rookie because their shelf life again is about the same, but they're only going to get two contracts as opposed to three. And they're going to hit that first contract later than other people would. So it's a juggle, but the Tremaine Edmonds situation is rare. It's
Right.
very rare. So you could take that 0.0001% chance that you're Tremaine Edmonds and try to, finagle things. You can always finagle things. It's funny because in hockey, you're drafted out of high school or college and it's based on your birth date. I think it's after a certain day, like it's September or something like that. If you're post that, then you're 1 year. If you're pre that, you're another year in the draft. And people finagle that stuff all the time where, okay, I want to take advantage of being in this draft class. So I'm going to go to prep school and, maybe I'll even like mess with my birth certificate or what. You hear all these crazy stories. The NFL doesn't matter. College football doesn't matter. You could sit back and maybe you think you're going to get extra scholarship offers because you're 20 and you look great against 17-year-olds. College coaches will notice that stuff. I say they don't care, but they will notice it. But it doesn't matter. I mean, Calvin Ridley was a 19-year-old senior and he went on to Alabama, played 3 seasons, went in pro first round, made millions, got suspended for gambling and all that stuff. But 19-year-old senior, they don't give a crap. This kid's great. I'm taking him. And everybody wanted him. If you're good enough, you could play against your own. And for a guy like Ridley, sort of staying back and he didn't do it purposely, kind of hurt him. So I would say just stay where you are. If you're good enough, you'll figure it out. If you're not, you're not. But we should probably wrap it up because you've
Yeah,
been
no,
over an
that
hour.
was great. Honestly, those last couple of things were as I say, pure gold. Pure gold. All right. Well, listen, go to myfootballcamps.com/D1 if you're a high school football recruit. And it's the same address, but D1 hyphen transfer if you're a transfer and you need help. We're here. DM us. We go back and forth with guys on it to answer questions. So we're glad to do that. And we'll see you guys next week.